Hello everyone, welcome to Chinese Antique 101 from X-Wing's Antique Hunt channel. In today's video, we're going to talk about Chinese blue and white porcelain, which is one of the most iconic type of porcelain in Chinese history. We're going to go through multiple different examples, and at the end of the video, you're going to know the secret of how to date the antique Chinese blue and white simply from its blue color. The color of blue comes from the cobalt fired at high temperature. Depends on where the cobalt pigment is sourced from. The blue color will look very different on the porcelain. And that is the secret of identifying the age of old Chinese blue and white porcelains. It might still sound very tricky, but generally speaking, there were only 6 different cobalt pigments used throughout the entire history. So once you get familiarized with all of them, it will become very easy to date the blue and white. So now we will go through each one of them from the earliest to the most recent ones. Now let's look at the Somali blue. This was an extremely precious pigment imported from Iran back in 14th century. The Somali blue were only used to make top quality porcelain for imperial court between 14th and early 15th century in China. Only very few pieces were found nowadays, and each one could worth millions of pounds. The blue color can be very dark with purple undertone. What's special about it is the cobalt blue tend to bleed slightly into the glaze. And pay attention to the spots here. Randomly you'll find those ink black spots, as if someone painted with pencil on it. This color is called stone blue. The pigment was locally sourced in China, and it can also be dated back to 14th century. But these pigments were used to make very cheap blue and white porcelain back then. The blue still looked dark, but slightly gray or greenish. There are many examples exist till today. You can even find it in the market or antique shops, but it won't be very expensive. Here comes the uniformed blue. This is another locally sourced cobalt pigment, which came after the Somali blue from 15th century. It was used to make very high quality porcelain between late 15th to early 16th century, which is middle Ming Dynasty. It is a very light blue, slightly grayish, and the biggest characteristic is clean and crisp. There's no bleeding effect at all. Therefore, it is perfect for very detailed line painting. The best pieces for this kind were made during late 15th century during Chenhua period, Ming Dynasty. Each one of those would also worth hundreds of thousands of pounds. The next one is Hui blue. Once again, this is imported from Midwest Asia. This cobalt pigment is commonly used during 15th century, particularly the Jiajing period in Ming Dynasty. Look at this example in the video. The bright and clear blue with the purplish tone is the identity. A good piece of this kind in Jiajing period can be made for imperial court. Zhe blue. It is named after the Zhejiang province, where it is sourced from. This pigment is widely used since 16th century and is very often seen on exported porcelain from China. The color is grayish blue, sometimes dark. Very often it looks uneven or muddy on the surface. Due to the mass production, this kind of blue and white porcelains can be found almost everywhere in antique fairs or antique shops. So now I've got 2 different Ming Dynasty pieces. They both are made roughly around 15th to 16th century. So this bowl is a slightly earlier piece, which is made in Wanli period, around early 16th century. So during that period of time, as I mentioned just now, they were using the imported cobalt pigment from the Midwest Asia. So you can find here we got a similar bleeding effect from the cobalt into the glaze, and also in some of the dark areas, you will feel like it is more close to purple rather than blue, and that's the characteristic of the Hui blue cobalt pigment, and that is mostly used during the late 15th century to early 16th century. So this is a very good example. On the other hand, this is almost late 16th century, probably Tianqi period, late Ming Dynasty. This jar is made for the mass production, and it's already start using blue for mass productions. And you can find the blue color here compared to this one became lighter and slightly grayish. That's a feature of the blue, and this kind of cobalt pigment is being carried on into Qing Dynasty for quite a long period of time for mass production. So the last one is called Zhuming blue. It is locally sourced from southern China. This pigment was used from 17th century and normally is to make the top quality porcelain during Qing Dynasty, including those imperial pieces. It offers a bright, clean, and silky blue. No bleeding at all on the glaze. The best pieces often looks like kingfisher's feather. So this is a blue and white bowl made in Kangxi period, approximately 17th century. So this is what I mentioned, top-rated quality porcelain, which is made from the Zhuming blue. So this is an 18th century piece. However, the pigment being used in here are mostly the blue, which is slightly grayish or darker than the Zhuming blue. So if you compare the paintings, the color pattern in the center of the bowl and the plate, you can straight away feel the difference. Alright, now you should have a full picture of different kinds of cobalt blues that you can find on Chinese porcelain. And you're now good to go for a bit of antique hunting on the Chinese blue and white. If you are interested in some of the examples I showed in the video, you can find them in my eBay shops. I also put the link down in the contents, you can find them. So that's it for today, and hopefully see you in the next video. Bye bye.